Hey, Who fans, and welcome to the Big Blue Box podcast. My name's Garry.
My name's Adam.
And welcome to episode 398.
Yeah!
Welcome to another episode of the Big Blue Box. Hope you've had a cracking week and that you've all managed to do something Doctor Who related.
Yeah,
Got you again. Got you again.
Yeah.
Yes, so another week, and also it's been another week of brand new Doctor Who. Which is
indeed.
It's been it's felt like a lifetime since we have said those words. I'm not counting the Christmas special, of course, because that was pretty recent. But before that, it felt like a lifetime since we've dived into new Doctor Who. So, yes, thank you very much for hopping onto the Big Blue Box once again to listen. If you're a newcomer to the Big Blue Box, then welcome aboard. If you're one of the long-time listeners, the grizzled ancients, then welcome back. It's good to have you all here. And before we kick off with the episode, as always, make sure you are following or subscribing wherever you get your podcasts from. We put a new episode out every single Friday, or most Fridays. And for the next few weeks, next couple of months, we'll be reviewing all of the new episodes, of course. So make sure you don't miss any of that. So grab us on your podcast app of choice. You can also listen for free over on the website, which is bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. And while you're there, you can check out all of the very cool reviews and articles and opinion pieces from the writing team. Those guys are awesome. Go and check that out. And there are links to go off to the socials too. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and come and get involved over there. Give us a like and a follow as we chat Doctor Who throughout the week. And lastly, we have a very cool free Discord server. There's a link on the website. Come and hang out with lots of other cool Who fans. And I would be remiss if I told you to not forget to remember to go and check out my co-host's channel over on YouTube. It is, of course, called The Geek's Handbag.
A Geek's Handbag. Yeah, go check out my YouTube channel and all my socials as well. I'm on everything pretty much.
He literally is.
Good old X, good old Facebook, good old Instagram, terrible old TikTok.
Yeah. Bad.
Still not a fan of TikTok, mate.
You're still not feeling it, are you? No, I can tell.
I'm not.
No,
I don't upload that regularly on there, but there's the odd vid.
Yeah. Okie dokie. For this episode, we're not going to go through any news. There's nothing big to talk about anyway. The only things that have been bubbling away are just a couple of interviews with Shooty and Russell on, now the episodes have started to trickle out and all that stuff. And there was no massive drama either. Before the series kicked off, dude, we had the world just absolutely falling apart at the seams because people thought that they wouldn't be able to cope with stuff going out at midnight and not being able to watch it at a certain time. Everything was completely fine, as it seems, as we knew it would be. So whenever you watched Doctor Who, whether you stayed up and watched it at midnight or you caught it over breakfast or the following day, whatever, we hope you enjoyed. And we've got some very strong opinions, I think, in this opening episode of this block of reviews, both from ourselves and from our listeners. So it's going to be a bit of it's going to be a mixture of chill and a bit of spicy, I think, is the best way to put it, dude. I'd normally go.
I'm right in saying, aren't I? We don't have any idea what each other think, do we? You have no idea what I think of these episodes, and I definitely have no idea what you think. I'm right in saying that, aren't I?
Yeah, definitely.
We've been very careful not to post on social media and stuff. So, I think we're both. This is going to be so interesting. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on these two.
Yeah, same, dude. Normally, Adam and I will fire a couple of texts or chat, about an episode we've got coming up, especially if it's a classic one. It's normally along the lines of, dude, that was a slog. to review that one or whatever. But for this one, nope. We are completely in the dark, so to speak.
I've been bursting at the seams to talk about it. I posted something in our Discord the other day, and I was like, "Oh, I hope that doesn't give anything away." I'm like, just been desperate to talk about it.
Yeah, same, dude. Same. Yeah. Okay. Without further ado, we will dive straight in because you and I haven't done. I don't think you have anyway. Done anything Doctor Who related other than watching the new stuff. So,
no, let's dive in.
We will dive straight in. So, we're not going to do trailers, all that stuff. You guys have literally just seen it, so we don't need to bother with playing trailers and all that stuff. But the first one, Space Babies, episode 1.
Babies.
Yay, episode 1 of season 1. That's kicked off the new era, properly, I guess, of Nshute's era and Russell T Davies' era. So it was broadcast on the 11th of May is the broadcast date, which it went out across BBC iPlayer here in the UK, Disney Plus in other countries, and then later on BBC One. Of course, it was written by Russell T Davies. It was directed by Julie Ann Robinson and stars our two new the TARDIS team, the new TARDIS team. So Ncuti, obviously, Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor and Millie Gibson as Ruby, and then one other supporting cast member, and if you want to class the babies as supporting, whatever. So the synopsis for this one is: for Ruby Sunday's first trip aboard the TARDIS with the Doctor, after a false start, they find themselves on a mysterious space station crewed by babies. A mysterious monster that strikes fear into even the Doctor's hearts roams the lower decks, and a lone adult protects the space babies from behind a screen. Can the Doctor and Ruby solve the mystery and get the babies to safety before the bogeyman gets them? Good synopsis, dude. Sounds interesting and typical RTD craziness on paper, but in practice, what were your thoughts on this one, mate?
Space babies. I'm going to be intrigued to hear like when you watch this, because I ended up watching this at midnight. I hadn't intended to. I'd actually gone to bed. I was quite tired. I was like, no, I'll watch it when I get up in the morning. And then I was rudely awakened by my other half at about 11:30 at night saying, there's northern lights in the sky. You've got to come and see. So I was like, cool. Yeah. So I got up and I looked at the sky and couldn't really see anything, but pretended to be wowed anyway. I was like, ooh, okay, I'm going back to bed now. And I was like, oh, hang on. It's 5 to midnight. I'm up now. I may as well watch one. So we both sat down together, which was nice. Fired up the old iPlayer. And it was quite cool because I did get that sense. I was looking at Twitter and I did get that sense that people were tweeting like 1 minute to go to midnight, which was nice because I think that was the thing I was worried about when they talked about, launching it on the iPlayer early, was that sense of not watching it together at a certain time. So it was quite cool, actually. I was kind of glad that I got up in the end. And we put it on, mate, and, for sort of 10 minutes, there was a lot of exposition and explaining what the TARDIS is and why the Doctor's called the Doctor, and the Rani got a name check. I thought that's cool. And I didn't mind the exposition because I thought, okay, I get it. Russell's, it's starting off sort of like a new era. He wants to explain to new fans on Disney Plus what Doctor Who is, as if they don't know. So I didn't mind it too much. And we got the nice scene with the dinosaur, and then Millie stepped on the butterfly, and we got, a scene which didn't make any sense at all where, like the butterfly effect, but it was all fun and I didn't mind it and it was looking good. Then we got on the space station with the babies, and to be honest, mate, I spent pretty much the rest of the episode just sat there cringing like mad. I was so embarrassed because I think sometimes when you're on your own, you can look past stuff, but watching it with my other half, you kind of feel like you want it to be good. You know what I mean? That thing of watching it with a friend or a partner, and you're like, oh no, this is embarrassing. This is really bad. And I just, by the time I got to the end of it, mate, I finished it. And I was like, well, that was just blimmin' awful. That was just absolutely juvenile, puerile, childish rubbish. It completely missed the mark for me, mate. I just thought, a bogeyman, a literal, when it said he was made of bogies, I was just like, oh dear. and then the spaceship farted off into God knows where with nobody able to drive it. I just, honestly, mate, I was so disappointed when I watched this. I thought it was dreadful, really disappointed. The only positives I've got for it, literally the only positives I can give for Space Babies is Shooty and Millie, who I liked them straight from the get-go. Yes, they're a little bit hyper. Yes, it was a little bit forced at times. But they were fun, mate. I really love them. I've really liked Shooty as the Doctor. I really like Millie as Ruby. So that they carried it for me. They really did, because without them, I honestly struggled to get through it. And as always, just to quickly sum up my summary before we really get into the meat of this episode, I always give an episode a second watch, especially if I don't enjoy it, because as we know, sometimes my opinion can change on a second watch, especially having watched this tired at midnight. So I did give this a second watch on Tuesday, and I struggled, mate. Honestly, I found it excruciating. I was sat there really hoping that I'd enjoy it more. I could not wait for it to end. It got about halfway through and I was like, I want to switch this off. I'm really hating it. I'm really not enjoying it. It's the only word I can use. Excruciating. I couldn't get through it, but I did. I did give it a second watch just in case. And this episode just totally misses the mark for me. I'm so disappointed in it. Can't understand what's going through Russell's head. If he thinks this is gonna latch on and bring in a brand new audience as well as satisfy the old audience, I just think he's completely missed the mark. And I've heard him talk about wanting to be like Stranger Things. This just makes me think he's deluded, mate. If he thinks this is anywhere near the standard of Stranger Things, he's lost the plot. I know he always opens with a light-hearted, fun episode, but even the humour just completely didn't land for me. But anyway, we'll get into it. That's my thoughts. I didn't enjoy it, in case you didn't quite get what I'm saying. I didn't like this much at all. Yeah, and I did give it a fair go. Trust me, I wanted to enjoy it, but I didn't. Over to you.
Oh dear, Bud, you're not feeling this one, mate, at all.
No.
Right.
And as you can see, I've needed to unpack that. This has been building up a week. I've needed to get off my chest, and I feel a lot better for it.
Okay, so right then. Well, my thoughts are kind of similar to yours. I didn't really, to be quick about it, I didn't really think this was a great episode overall. I wasn't really feeling this one. To me, it was one of those episodes that felt like it had some funny little quirky moments sort of littered throughout, but the whole thing just didn't really have much substance there. So yeah, I didn't think it was that great. And to me, it felt like one of the episodes that you would shove in sort of mid-season.
Yes.
To sort of flesh the series out where you want to. To me, this would be perfect if you had 2 episodes that were very dark. So if you had a really dark episode where somebody had potentially been taken or someone's died or whatever, or the Doctor's really in trouble and, things are going south. Or you've had a mid-series 2-parter where it's very dark and it's a bit depressing, and then you throw something like this in there afterwards and you just have a laugh for a little while and that sort of thing. So for a series opener, it did feel a little bit like, not kicking off the season as with some decent substance that I was hoping for. And also, we have to sort of remind ourselves as well, is that the kind of expositional stuff and the Doctor explaining Gallifrey and explaining time travel a little bit and all that stuff, we have to remind ourselves that because this is going out as a soft reboot of sorts to many countries now getting this on streaming who have never seen Doctor Who before, this is for those dudes, right? This is for the people that wanted to jump in fresh. So I get that. I understand why there was a little bit more than you would normally have from a very top level. This is the TARDIS, it does this. So it was all right to me. I didn't hate it. I didn't come away thinking, oh my God, that's the worst episode of Doctor Who I've ever seen. It was just left me feeling a bit flat and a little bit like, that's definitely not going in the top list of anything. It's not going in the hidden gems of anything. I probably won't reach for it in years to come. If I'm in a mood to watch a shooty episode, I won't reach for this one. It was, just left me feeling flat, dude. And
I gotta say, I think because I struggled to get through it a second time, I don't imagine I'll ever be inclined to watch this again. And that's the thing. There's not even really any little moments that might intrigue me to put it on again. And I think why I'm so annoyed about it, mate, is because it's not just because it was just such a, like you said, middle of the road episode. Like you said, it definitely wasn't anywhere near, excuse me, strong enough to kick off, the season, especially where Doctor Who is at the moment, where it really is on shaky ground. Let's not make two bones about it. It needed to really kick off with a strong story or something that got people talking positively about it. But there was nothing in it. There's not one sort of thing where if I think of Space Babe, I say, I wouldn't mind watching it because there's that scene or this scene. You know what I mean? It didn't give the general public or the fans anything to really get their teeth into and say, God, what about that monster reveal? What about that? There was nothing in it at all. I just can't get over how average it was for a season opener. And that, again, this comes back to what I was trying to say. This is why I'm annoyed about it, because, this needed, I think, to really be a cracking series opener that you're always going to get people that are like, oh, RIP Doctor Who, it's rubbish, it's dead. Okay. But this kind of played into their hands, I was just sat there thinking, this is really not great. This is not what we need to get this series started. And I genuinely felt sorry for Shooty and Millie, because I really liked them in it. I thought, God, these guys are trying like really hard. They're doing a bit of a Matt Smith here because he had some real duds as well. But at least he had an absolutely cracker. We still talk about the 11th Hour, dude. We still talk about how great that is as a debut episode for the Doctor. And I know that Shooty's debut was Church and Ruby Road, but like you just said, that already feels like ages ago. And although we enjoyed the episode, it was again a bit forgettable. I feel sorry for this Doctor so far. He's not getting the good material, and this is not what we want at this point in Doctor Who.
Yeah, no, I agree, dude. I think because the two of them together, I think work really well together. They've clearly got that. When Tennant and David Tennant and Billie Piper first started their series 2 together, you could tell immediately that they had a very good rapport on screen and the chemistry was there, probably aided by the fact that they very quickly became good mates in real life. So whenever you saw them together, there was such great chemistry there. Yeah. And a bit like when, I'm not taking anything away from Martha, Freema or anything like that, but fast forward a little bit to Catherine Tate, there was a similar thing with those two as well. And you can tell it's almost the same with Shooty and Millie. You can tell that they get on really well together. And all of the behind the scenes stuff that we've seen and all the photo stuff, they're always laughing, giggling and getting on. So you can see that transfers a little bit on screen, as well as their very, very, very good acting ability. You can tell that the chemistry is there between the two of them, which is great. But it just feels like like you said, the writing for them and the material they've been given, especially in this open one, even these first two actually, which we'll come on to, just doesn't seem to maximize their chemistry and their ability as actors. It just feels like so before this kicked off, right, in the last year, maybe 2 years since we've known that Russell's coming back, you and I have kind of alluded to the fact that that the first RTD era of Doctor Who was so good, and it was so good, and it's still very good, that we trust in Russell and all that stuff. I guess that shows that you can't bank on, lightning striking twice in the same place, I guess. I mean, we'll see how the rest of the series pans out. But at the moment, it feels like, I don't know what Russell's thinking in terms of just... There's two things going on here, I think, dude. I think one of them is either Russell's just had a massive swing in terms of how he sees a series of Doctor Who playing out versus how he did it before. Or there's been some serious messing about from people at Disney. Now, I don't know which way round it is or if it's a combination of the two things, but it doesn't feel like the kind of thing that Russell T Davies would do. So I don't know what the situation is there, but Shooty and Millie do together, are electric in some scenes, really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. I think it's just the material they've been given. It screams of like some episodes, like you said, of Matt Smith, doesn't it? Where he absolutely carried a few of those without question. And it feels like those two are carrying the same thing. And to be honest with you, out of this entire episode, my favourite part of the episode was only about 2 minutes. It's where the Doctor and Ruby stop in a corridor and they have that flashback to the church scene.
Yes.
Yes. And the memory that the Doctor has
and the
now
snow
been
comes through.
Yeah, that was amazing. That just 2 minutes there was really good, and that's this concept of the Doctor's memory being changed somehow, where we saw in the Christmas special, he noticed the person dropping Ruby at the doorway in the church and then just walking off, but now his memory's changed somehow, and that character's now pointing directly at him. And he doesn't really know what's going on. And then the snow happens, like you said. And that, to me, was one of the best bits by far, because it showed a real sense of mystery, a bit of suspense. It wouldn't be so bad if the rest of the episode was better, but that just made it stand out even more as a standout moment. The rest of it was just fluffy. I don't know, just fluffy and just not hitting the right beats, I think. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Not hitting the beats, because I didn't think that the humour in it landed at all. And Russell's humour generally I find quite fun in scripts, but there were scenes like Millie getting covered in gunk, which I again just cringed at. That's not funny. It's just not funny. But yeah, I liked that scene, mate. I think because it added a bit of mystery. It actually took me back into it rather than sitting there thinking, because there was nothing I cared about in this. That's the thing. It was so sort of lightweight as a story. I mean, the babies, I don't know about, I don't have any kids, so maybe people with babies would have watched it and found it funny, but I couldn't work out who this episode was aimed at, because I can't even imagine like my 10-year-old nephew sitting through this. Like my sister often says, like, is there any Doctor Who that William could watch? He might like it. I'm like, I can't even imagine this holding his attention. But then, like you said, you got that scene with the flashback, and I was like, oh, okay. So we're tying into Ruby Road and the mystery of Ruby, which again we'll come on to, because we've got this whole mystery about who she is, and the Doctor's looking at her on the scanner, which is very reminiscent of the Impossible Girl thing again. So it felt like we were sort of retreading water, if you like. So we themes are coming back that we've already seen. I think that's the other thing. Even things I liked, like the mystery surrounding Ruby and stuff, we've had all this before. So I'm really hoping Russell's going to take in a different direction. The scene of him almost copying the End of the World, was it, where the scene with Rose where he adapts her phone so he can call her mum. There was so much. I thought, well, we've seen this all before. It just felt like, I've got to be honest, it just felt like a very lazy script from Russell, and just certainly not what I'd expect. If I was him and I sat back and thought, right, this is the first proper episode with the Doctor, really, to kick off his first season, I just can't believe he felt this was up to scratch and good enough to launch, series 1. I just can't believe it, mate. And you're right. Maybe Disney had put their 10 pence worth in. I don't know. But as much as I absolutely loved the Sarah Jane Adventures, this to me felt like a reject Sarah Jane Adventure script that he found down the back of the sofa. It really felt so childish. I don't even think it would be good enough for Sarah Jane. And I love that show. That's a bit of a backhanded compliment. But you know what I'm saying? It was so juvenile, the script, that I just can't believe he felt this was quality enough to launch the series.
Yeah.
Even a mid-episode, I don't think it was strong enough,
Yeah.
I do worry about Russell. I said this when he came back, mate, that when you reach the top of the mountain, there's only one way down. I was worried from the minute he come back that he was going to tarnish his reputation, because I really believe he's already started to do that, He was held in such high regard. I just think it was a really brave / dangerous move for him to come back. And I really think if this is the sort of level of script he's going to be delivering, he is going to tarnish his own reputation within the Doctor Who fandom, because he was so highly regarded, and rightly so. He did such a great job when he brought the show back in in 2005. You know, and I know this is only one episode. Maybe the rest of the series that he's written, because he has written a lot this series, which again slightly worries me. Maybe the rest are going to be bangers, mate. But yeah, this certainly wasn't for me anyway.
No, I read you, dude. Yeah, I can tell you were not impressed, mate, at all with this one. And,
yeah, I know. It's the thing is, I hate to keep putting the boot in because one thing I can't stand is being negative, especially after the last few years where the series hasn't exactly hit the spot for me. So I hate to sort of keep on being negative, but I have to be honest with you, mate. I've got very, very few positives to say on this. So, listener, apologies if this is a bit of a rant, but I haven't got a lot of good stuff to say about this one. It really is just Millie and Shooty that I felt were good in it, and they were good in it. I think, you know, we'll talk about them as in their performance a bit, but they were the only thing I liked, really. And like you said, the scene with the snow, if I'm clutching at straws, and maybe the first 5 minutes were nice, but yeah, I kind of wish they'd stayed with the dinosaur thing. I felt that was much more interesting.
Yeah, the dinosaur thing was really cool. Just a couple of minutes worth of screen time, but and was really interesting. You know, the butterfly effect and all that stuff. It was it really played into the whole. Explaining to new timers, not just of Doctor Who, but just time travel in general and all that stuff, you know. So it was all cool. And then I think the second for me that I felt this is a bit weird is when they came back into because that whole thing was really cool when she steps on the butterfly, gets transformed into so the course of history was changed immediately after that, and she changes into the green alien and stuff. The a Rubithan blue apparently alien.
Okay.
And what did it for me when as soon as it happened, when I thought, okay, this episode's either going to carry on like this or it's going to get better, is when they go back into the TARDIS and the Doctor says that the console has a butterfly compensation switch.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You know, as soon as I heard him say that, I was like, what was that? Huh? Like we've just shoehorned in a mechanism here to reverse the thing that's just happened. I think, come on, man, please let this not be a thing. But it ultimately ended up, and it's hard to criticize in some respects because it's got that quirky kind of RTD flavor in some parts of it, you know. But overall, it just, when you see things like that, you think, oh, come on, we're past that now. We are sort of past that, doing that stuff, and which kind of leads me back to the story as a whole. This very much smacks to me of pre Doctor Who Russell T Davies to me, which is why I think the Sarah Jane Adventures worked so well for younger viewers, because before Russell jumped onto Doctor Who the first time round, just before 2005, he wrote this series for, I think it was CBeebies or just BBC Kids or whatever, and it was called Wizards versus Aliens, I think.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You know, and that had very much that Sarah Jane Adventures feel to it, where it was just nothing too serious at all, aimed at younger viewers, and just a real fun sort of kids show for 20 minutes. And that lent itself very well to SJA. And I know a lot of people have compared that, but I honestly think this would have been a great Sarah Jane Adventures episode. It's got that, it's got that spin-off feel to it, to me. It's got that kind of, if SJA was still around, this would have been thrown into that bucket straight away. As soon as the idea was thought up and start developing the script, that would, my opinion anyway, if I was, you know, on the writing team or the producing team, whatever, Russell's going through the scripts and SJA was still going, I would have, like, you know, the gold buzzer would have gone off immediately, and I've gone like, yep, there's your SJA opener right there. Perfect. Absolutely perfect for that. And it has that RTD kids show feel to it. So it doesn't feel like the opener to the main show that we heard before. But anyway, one thing I wanted to ask you was, did you get and I might be biased here because this is my favourite classic Doctor, but did you get some McCoy vibes in a couple of places? So, when anyone that's seen the McCoy series, there's a few episodes or a couple of episodes where there's a little bit of tension between the Doctor and Ace, where the Doctor's got a kind of a little dark streak to him, where he's talking to Ace and he's all smiley and funny like he normally is. But then when she's not around or something, she turns away, his face just goes really straight, and there was a little bit of tension. And, that sort of thing that kicked off the whole, when we interviewed Andrew Cartmel years ago, and we were saying to him, if Doctor Who had continued, would we have seen a darker side to it and a darker side of the Doctor? And he was like, absolutely. That was our plan, to change it up a little bit. So there was a couple of bits where Ncuti is confused about Ruby. So there's a bit, the scene we mentioned where the snow came down and had the flashback. They had this nice embracing hug and he's all smiley, but as soon as they hug, his face immediately changes to concern and what's going on. And, this is, turning out to be a bit darker than what I thought it would be. And then he's snap of the fingers, he's back to being smiley and whatever. And then towards the end of the episode, when they crash into her mum's apartment with the TARDIS and stuff, she runs out and everything. He stays in the TARDIS, uses the sonic, and he does the DNA scan. And his face then is like, something sinister is here. Something is not right with Ruby and stuff. So did you get some McCoy vibe? That was my initial thought. And I might be being biased, but I certainly thought that, dude, straight away.
Yeah, no, I can totally see where you're coming from. And I did like that stuff, I have to say. It's one of the things that has really drawn me to shoot his Doctor straight away, that he does have, different layers almost immediately. Because we all have our own opinions, mate. And I have seen some people say, oh, he's 1B, he just, jumps around and all that. And I'm like, well, no, I don't agree with that. I already see Ncuti giving us, quite a few layers to this Doctor. And that's one of them, that he got this more serious side to him, which, again, I really like. For me, that's what was sort of missing from Jodie's Doctor. And again, people will disagree with that. They would say she was totally layered. I didn't see it. But with Ncuti, I do. I see that there is a side to his Doctor that he's all fun and games, on the forefront, but underneath there's this more serious, the ticking of the mind, the thinking behind the smile, which I like. I love it when an actor can capture that side of the Doctor. And yeah, I'm definitely seeing a bit of that with Ncuti, and I'm really intrigued by it because although we do seem to be slightly doing the same thing with the mysterious girl, like Ruby being this mysterious girl again, it does seem like we've been there, done that. But I feel like we may go in a different, we have to go in a different direction with this one. It's got to be something else. I have no idea at the minute as well. I'm loving all the theories that people are coming out with, that she's Susan or she's the Rani's daughter or she's this, she's that. I'm loving all the theories coming out about Ruby. I personally don't have any clue who she's going to turn out to be. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this one at the minute, mate? Any sort of theory? No, she's Susan's daughter. Someone said. I thought that was a good shout. Yeah, that might be a good one. It's kind of up in the air. To be honest with you, I've seen like maybe 10, 12 different content creators over the last week on YouTube and other podcasters who have thrown their thoughts in and stuff. And it really is up in the air on Ruby, I think, because we had this similar thing, didn't we, where at the end of the Christmas special, Mrs. Flood, she broke the fourth wall and said about the TARDIS and whatnot. And everybody said, who's Mrs. Flood? Is she the Rani? Is she a grown-up, character from before? And, all this stuff. It's a similar thing where we've been given literally nothing to go on, not even a tiny little thread to go on with it. So yeah, we could sit here all day and talk about who we think. Maybe the Susan, I don't know. There could be a little bit with that, just because in the following episode, which we'll come on to in a minute, again, a little bit of exposition. We have the Doctor say that, over that end of London, that's where, I was at Totter's Lane and my granddaughter Susan, all that stuff. So there is a mention of Susan. So potentially, maybe, I'm not sure. But, how does that play into the woman that left her at the church and stuff? Yeah,
Does the time period work out? I don't know. I honestly don't know about that, but
I'm hearing some great theories on that person as well. The one, whoever's left Ruby at the church. Some people are saying it could be Ruby herself that's left herself at the church, which is weird. The trickster from Sarah Jane Adventures has been heavily hinted at. Who else have they said? I don't know. There's a lot of different theories on that as well. So again, it's nice. I said earlier there was nothing to get our teeth into. I suppose there are these little threads coming through. So that that is cool. Maybe there is some stuff for us to get some meat on the bones after all.
Yes, potentially. Yeah. So, so I think overall, I think we've got hoping we've got much better Doctor Who to come after these couple of episodes. So we know that Millie's going to be around for another series after this. So we might not find out the mystery at the end of this series. We could do and then move on to something else with her. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good point.
But I don't know how that's going to play out. But I'm certainly loving those little nuggets of mystery there with what's going on with Ruby. And we said in last week's episode, when you and I did our kind of build up to the start of season 1, we did say that the focus is probably going to be Ruby throughout this first series and where she comes from and who she actually is and all that stuff. So we'll see how that pans out. Were there any sort of, other than the bits we just spoken about, were there any bits that you did particularly like about this episode? You're probably not from the sound of it, but was there anything that you thought, it was good, or was it just literally a write-off for you?
I have to be honest, mate. It was a bit of a write-off. I think I just, not to sound sarcastic, I think I just liked the beginning and the end. I just liked the stuff where it was just Shooty and Millie. Like, for example, at the end when he's giving her the TARDIS key and she's like, we nearly died. He's like, yeah, we did, didn't we? But we had a lot of fun. Those little scenes when it's just more just the sort of interaction between the two characters. And, I think what I'm trying to say is the bulk of the story just didn't interest me at all. What I liked was the interactions between the Doctor and Ruby. Those were the scenes that carried the episode for me and got me through it. So I liked the beginning and I liked the end when they got in the TARDIS and were off on more adventures, because that's the bit I think RTD's got right, is we are back to fun in the TARDIS. No, not fun in the TARDIS, that sounds wrong, but we're back to the Doctor and the companion just wanting to have fun. There's this energy to the two of them. And I think that's the thing I'm liking so far, is that we've got a Doctor and companion relationship where they just want to have fun. They want to let loose, crank the TARDIS switches. Where are we going to go? Let's have a random landing. I like that side of it. The unpredictability. Yeah, sort of almost like reckless youth. The Doctor's back to being young and rejuvenated and he's enjoying himself. So I liked those scenes, between the two of them, where they were just having fun. But it was just the actual bulk of the story that completely lost me. It just didn't interest me at all. So yeah, I'm sorry. There weren't that many scenes I did like in it, but there were the odd one or two.
I'll read you. Yeah. Same for me, dude. There wasn't anything that kind of stood out massively that I thought. I thought the monster was pretty cool at the beginning. I thought, it's not too bad. But then when you get to the end of the episode, you just realise that it's you're just watching like a different version of Aliens. The film Aliens, where you have that kind of style monster legging around all the corridors and everything, and then at the end she blows it out the airlock. So it was all that. It was just sci-fi that's just been recycled a little bit for Doctor Who. The only difference is that the Doctor saves the monster, because you have this kind of like retelling of the narrative from earlier on, where he's saying to Ruby, I'm the last of my kind, I'm the last of whatever, and then he sort of relates that to the monster at the end, even though it's a gruesome, icky thing. He still relates to it as like, you're the last of your kind, so in some shape or form, you should be saved. Lastly, before we put a score on this episode, it's clear, isn't it, that Russell is playing into the timeless child thing from the Chibbers era.
Mate, no bones about it. Yeah,
that's not been. Again, it's something that you and I have spoken about over the last couple of months, in between things kicking off, and we did say, didn't we, that is Russell just going to put that to bed and leave it alone, just because the reception from fandom as a whole has not been great on it at all. Like, you get the odd person that happens to really like it, and that's cool, fair play. But We don't generally do that sort of thing. We don't pander to fandom too often. It's like, whatever. But that's got an overwhelming amount of people that didn't like that at all. So you would have thought that, when he took the reins, would he have thought, okay, the fandom just clearly doesn't get that at all, doesn't like it, doesn't want to continue with it. I'll just not pretend it didn't happen, but I'll just leave that behind, and focus on something new. But straight away, almost, it felt like the Doctor's, when he's explaining Gallifrey and all that stuff, he just goes straight into the whole, I was left there and adopted and all that stuff. So clearly not leaving that behind, dude.
No, and me personally, I wish it was just left alone, like the half-human thing. I would just personally not bring it back up. Russell seems to be going the absolute opposite. He wants to almost be like, no, I'm going to do more. It almost feels like he's just sticking two fingers up to everyone who didn't like it. But he's handling it better already, I have to say. I mean, if he is going to go there, and obviously he is, like you said, the first 2 or 3 minutes was the Doctor talking about how he was adopted and how he was, the Time Lords were this, what's he call them? Posh race who had titles and stuff. So yeah, he's definitely going there. I guess what I've got to get over is I just still don't like the idea of the Timeless Child, but if I can just sort of get over that, and I'm going to have to and just go with it. I think Russell's writing it, he's using it well in terms of, the storytelling, because he's obviously relating the Doctor to Ruby, the fact that she was left at, at the church and the Doctor was left at the portal. So I like what he's doing with it, is what I'm trying to say. I just still don't really like the idea that the Doctor isn't, wasn't born on Gallifrey and blah, blah, blah. I'm still not really that comfortable with the Timeless Child storyline, but yeah, he's going there, mate. So I'm going to have to get over that. And I am just going to go with the flow. I'm not going to get too hung up over it. Unless, of course, there's some big revelations which change the Doctor's lore even more, then I might have a bit of a grizzle. But yeah, he's going there, mate. So we've got no choice but to go with it. And as much as I don't like the Timeless Child, I kind of like it in the way that Russell's using it so far. Does that make sense? Like, if we're going to go there, then as long as it's written well or utilised well, then okay.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head with all that, dude.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, my thoughts exactly the same. It's like there's always room for change, I think, whenever nothing is ever set in stone, right? With any franchise, with any character. But there's something just really lovely and really cool about, the Doctor being born on Gallifrey, and because it kind of, the flashbacks that we've seen prior, like one that pops to mind is when in David Tennant's era, when we have I think it's Last of the Time Lords, where we have that flashback with him and the Master as kids on Gallifrey. So that whole history around Gallifrey and the Time Lords and the Doctor being very much a part of that, it doesn't change it up too much, but it's more the origin side of things, obviously, that's, that just doesn't quite have the same. It takes something that was very, very cool and such a great concept that was, thought of back in the day, that wasn't revealed to us for ages. When Hartnell's era first kicked off, nobody knew really what Gallifrey is or where it is or what the Time Lords were. It was just some dude, some old cranky guy that was, legging about through space, and you didn't need to know. And then slowly over the decades, when stuff's been sort of, spoon-fed to us a little bit, it's like, oh, that's so cool. It's and the reasons why the Doctor did certain things when he was his younger self on Gallifrey, all that stuff was so amazing and so cool. But then when Chibbers came along, the snap of his fingers, it's like, that's all irrelevant now. It's just all. So, yeah, I was hoping, like you, that RTD would be like, like chats over the coffee table with him and Chibbers. He's like, dude, I love you. I love you right in. I think you're so cool and all that lot. But I've got to say, mate, this whole Timeless Child thing's a bit of a beep. So I'm just going to leave it alone. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, I mean, I said at the time with Chibbers, I said, he dropped the grenade. He dropped the grenade, but he did nothing with it. That's what annoyed me more than anything. Like, if you're gonna have the beep to do something like that, if you're gonna have the balls to do it, you got to see it through. You can't just throw the grenade in and run. And that's what annoyed me. So in a way, although I would rather it just got forgotten, I kind of applaud Russell for picking up the grenade and thinking, okay, if you're not going to do anything with it, I'll do something. So in that sense, I guess it's good. But I don't lose sleep over the Timeless Child, mate. I'm just not a fan of it. I think of scenes like Tennant in, what's the one with Kylie? Voyage of the Damned, is it?
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, that scene where he's walking towards the camera in his tux and he's like, I'm a Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey in the constellation of good service. I'm 900. That speech, whenever I watch that, I just think, you're not though, are you? Because that's been, it's been taken away from you pretty much. But so it's times like that it irks me. Does that make sense? But otherwise I just think, okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It makes a lot of stuff just redundant now and irrelevant. Yeah. So anyway, lastly, before score, a lot of people have got an issue with the farting ship and letting all the fart methane out, which is really weird. But nobody seems to have a problem with the farting Slovene back in Aliens of London and World War III back in 2005. Everyone found that a bit of a laugh and just a bit like whatever. So interesting how people's view on the old trouser cough gas can affect a story, whatever. But normally I'd be like, that's funny. But in the context of the story, it was more just like, oh, Russell, you've kind of gone a bit,
I had my head in my hands, mate. I was like, oh, Russell, please. I was just like, I just didn't find it funny. I was just like, by that point, I was just couldn't quite believe that we'd got a monster made of bogies and a farting ship. I just thought,
yeah,
seriously, I honestly thought I may be dreaming, mate. I thought maybe I was actually still upstairs in bed. I couldn't believe that somebody that has written some of the best, like Turn Left and some of the best Doctor Who stories was launching a series with a bogey monster, literal, and a farting spaceship. I mean, where was the spaceship go? Who was piloting it? So once it did fart off, she couldn't land it, could she? Whatever the character was called, who, by the way, was a really average actor. Her performance was like EastEnders level. I don't know. I know she's been in loads of stuff, but she didn't bring anything to the episode either. I don't know what the actress is called, but she couldn't even pilot the ship. So, and the babies couldn't either, could they?
The babies couldn't. No. So she makes that very clear that.
Because where were they going to go?
Yeah. Well, Ruby says, "Can't you just fly, to somewhere else?" And the Doctor corrects her. He's like, this is a space station. We're stationary, no jets or anything. So I think they find this planet that's apparently for refugees, and they'll be able to do that. So that was one thing, which is cool. But then, we do the big fart explosion thing, and it sends the ship in the correct direction towards the planet. What happens when they get into the atmosphere and that? Who knows? Would it have crash landed, just slammed into the surface of the planet? I don't know. But
just lazy writing. I just can't believe the lazy writing. It's it's shocking.
Yeah, so that was Golda Rochevel, who played Jocelyn Sincere. And at first I thought she was an all right character. I thought, she's got some huge amounts of empathy for everybody around her, because it was the crew that sort of abandoned ship unhappily to leave the babies behind and stuff. And there was a little bit of politics around this episode. That's the other thing as well, isn't it? Sorry to go on, but you and I criticised Chibber's eras heavily when they did this preachy kind of, let's bring a bit of, current day politics into it and stuff like that. We had this thing where Jocelyn's like, the laws around babies and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then Ruby's like, yeah, well, it's not that different now, sort of thing. There was a little bit of that going on. We thought, oh God,
it wasn't too in your face. I mean, there was the bit about the baby who said, am I wrong? And oh no, you can be whatever you want. There was some messaging going on there, but it wasn't, I didn't find it too heavy handed. I'll be honest. It was in there for sure. Mm-hmm. And there were other themes which are in there, but it wasn't too bad. I didn't think that they're pretty obvious, but they're not it's not the Doctor turning to the camera and telling you. So yeah, those themes were there for sure, but they weren't too bad.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And
yeah.
Okay, so let's do a score for this and then move on to the next one. What would you rate this, dude? What's your score?
Yeah, I've got 2 notes just quickly that I'm just going to say. Space Babies talking CGI, dreadful. Rest of the episode looked great. So you can see the Disney money in there, but the mouths that they'd CGI under the babies just didn't work at all. It's the first thing I think really that took me out of the episode, if I'm honest. When the babies wheeled in and started talking, I was like, oh, this just looks bad. So that I've got to go off my chest. And finally, a positive, yay. Liked the fact there was a little Star Trek reference in there. The Doctor said, oh yeah, we'll have to go and meet them one day or something.
Oh yeah.
Which is intriguing because Ruby's saying it as if she's watched Star Trek on the TV, but the Doctor's saying, yeah, we could go and meet them as if they're, in a show, which is another thing that's been kind of rumoured that they're in a Toymaker program or something like WandaVision. Another theory.
Yeah.
Interesting. So like the little Star Trek nod at the start there, which was very much a blink and you'll miss it moment, but I appreciated it. Mate, I'm going to whack a score on it because I don't want to go on anymore. I'm giving this a 4 out of 10.
Okay, a 4.
4.
Alrighty. I'm going to give this I'll go with a 4 as well, actually, because I feel like...
wow, I thought you'd be higher than me.
No, because I feel like it's not middle of the road. It's below middle of the road to me. It's...
Yeah, it is to me.
Yeah, it's not awful. I don't want to give it a 2 or anything dreadful like that. It's not the worst, but it's certainly not a great... What makes it doubly disappointing is because it's the series opener. You just expected something a little bit more epic, a little bit more... I get the whole, let's ease the... especially new viewers, let's ease them into Doctor Who a little bit, before we get onto the big stuff potentially. But yeah, I was expecting to be blown away on this first one, and we ultimately didn't. So that's that to contend with. So Space Babies and a 4 apiece. Let's move on to the second episode, dude, because we had 2 episodes drop, obviously, at the same time. This one is called The Devil's Chord. And the synopsis for this... Actually, first of all, it was written again by Russell T Davies. It was directed by Ben Chessel, this one. And the synopsis is: the Doctor and Ruby meet the Beatles, but discover that the all-powerful Maestro is changing history. London becomes a battleground with the future of humanity at stake. So, over to you, dude. Your initial thoughts on episode 2.
Okay, so I enjoyed this one more. I'm very pleased to say I'm actually glad that they released the first 2 episodes. I didn't like the idea at the time, but having not enjoyed the Space Babies to the level that I did, I needed something, and I went into this with dread, actually thinking, please don't be, as bad. And I saw it was getting such a mixed reaction online, so I didn't get to see this until the Sunday. I watched this Sunday morning. So I don't know if you remember, I told you I was going to see some friends in London, and we had planned to watch Doctor Who on a projector. That went out the window. Because I went to see my friends, but they saw that I'd already watched the episode, so they watched Space Babies. We got together in the afternoon, had a few drinks, talked about how none of us enjoyed it. We all thought it was terrible. So we weren't in any rush to watch Devil's Chord. I stayed over theirs. We got up in the morning. We were like, should we put Devil's Chord on? There was a bit of a... We put it on. And there is a reason I'm telling you all this backdrop. I'll get to it in a second. And we enjoyed it for the most part. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't great. It felt like certain scenes went on forever. There were times when I was thinking, is this episode actually 45 minutes? Because it feels like it's already been on an hour. But all 4 of us pretty much enjoyed it. So the reason I'm talking about being with my friends is what I've liked about my viewing experience with these first 2 stories is I've been with other people to get their reaction. So with Space Babies, I was with my partner to get his reaction, and I very much see him as like the casual viewer because he likes Doctor Who, but he's not that bothered about it. So to get his reaction to the first one, he thought it was dreadful. And then to be with him and my 2 friends, who again, I would class as casual viewers. They love they love television, they love sci-fi and stuff. But again, I wouldn't class them as hardcore Doctor Who fans or anything like that. But they like Doctor Who and they will watch it. So to be around those guys and get the feel for the episodes through them as well, I think was quite interesting for me. And we all said it was a lot better. As I really feel like this maybe should have kicked off the series. We were all a little bit stunned by the last 10 minutes, but obviously we'll get to that. I think all of us kind of turned and looked at each other like, what the hell is going on with the dance routine? But yeah, overall, mate, this was much more to my liking. It by no means great, but just like having, coming after the Space Babies, this is more of what I wanted. And I like the musical theme because obviously I love music. I play piano, so it kind of played into the things I liked. But yeah, we'll dive into it. I'll talk about Jinx Monsoon and all the things I did like and all the things I didn't like. But overall, this worked a lot better for me. What about you?
Yeah, so I preferred this one, obviously, to, as you can tell, listener, to the first one, to Space Babies.
Thank goodness.
But I still wasn't really into it, though, dude.
Okay, that's what I've heard from a lot of people. Okay.
Yeah, it's very weird to say. I think I'm loving Shooty as the Doctor. Don't get me wrong. I'm really enjoying him playing the Doctor. It's very cool, and I really like Millie Gibson as Ruben. I think the two of them, as we've said already, it's they're really, really cool on screen together. But what I'm not getting, though, is I'm not getting any sense of, after these first two episodes at least, I'm not getting a sense of, wow, Doctor Who's back. Or, wow, that was an amazing episode of Doctor Who. Or even a great episode of Doctor Who. What I'm getting is a sense of, that was all right. That was all right. There's again, a bit like Space Babies, there's little pockets of greatness in there. Like little moments that are very cool, but then it just gets overshadowed by, in this particular episode, I will be completely honest with you, dude, this second one was way too fluffy. Very, very, very fluffy throughout. Now, I absolutely am not going to get into the whole Russell being indulgent in this and really going the full shebang on, pronouns and and all that kind of thing from a gender perspective or a sexuality perspective or that whole culture, whatever that might be. I'm not getting into that, but you cannot deny that the entire thing was extremely fluffy. I think is the best word to use in this context. So that's not to say that that's the reason why I didn't enjoy it as much. I just felt like it kept going round and round in circles. Like we'd get a cool scene where it'd be like, right, okay. Like a good example is when the Ruby's a bit confused. She's like, look, we must be okay and we must stop, Maestro, because I'm still alive and the human race is still here. So we must defeat, and the Doctor's like, no, you don't understand. So he takes her up on the roof, shows her London, which is like on fire, completely destroyed pretty much, and all the rest of it. You think to yourself, oh wow, this is very cool. This is highlighting the reasons why you don't have timelines are not set in stone, and things can change and all the rest of it, and a bit timey-wimey. But then immediately followed up with that, you have like this real, just scene with Maestro or whatever that's completely, or a scene with the Beatles perhaps, which is just, I'm not going. That's a whole nother thing with those guys, but. And it just flitted between being very, very cool, these little moments, to then just being completely, I don't know, just fluffy and I don't know, dude. I'm struggling with some words here. I need to be careful with words, but yeah. So it was just really up and down for me, this one, dude. And when I got to the end of it, I was like, and it's going to be very weird to say, and I'm not sure if you share this opinion. But at this point in the season, in the opening act, the first 3 or 4 episodes, it could be Stephen Moffat to the rescue. It could be.
Well, we'll find out this week, won't we? We'll find out. I do get what you mean, mate, because the story was paper thin. I mean, that's what I mean about some scenes feeling like they were going on forever, because there was a point in the episode where you're like, come on, you're gonna have to just defeat Maestro now, because you've just been running around almost like Scooby-Doo style for like the last half an hour. So the story was paper thin. It was really, for me, just an episode of atmosphere, I guess. I liked the music, because I am a music man. So I really loved the idea of the Doctor going back to Abbey Road and seeing the Beatles. And I found it quite funny when they were singing their song about the dog and the Doctor and Ruby's face. And, but yeah, scenes just went on far too long because there wasn't any story. It was just, I think Russell might have come out and said this just before the episode aired, actually. I think he did a bit of damage limitation. He's like, it's just an episode of scenes. And I'm like, it really was. It's just little scenes. There's no real story. The concept's good. Maestro going around stealing music and, because there's no music in the world just can't express itself. So it goes to war and stuff, fairly interesting theme, but it just wasn't enough really to stretch out over 45 minutes or whatever it was. Was it 50 minutes? This one slightly longer, whatever. But I mean, the end bit, mate, the play off, the music off, I just went on forever. I was just like, I was quite enjoying it, but I was thinking, come on, there wasn't enough meat on the bones in the story. Even though I definitely enjoyed it more than you, I still found, even on the second watch, I was worried it was going to really drag. But even on the second watch, I enjoyed it. And I think the big thing that's going to be an enjoyment factor for a lot of people is Jinx Monsoon's performance, because there's no doubt about it. I mean, I've never seen anyone chew the scenery as much. Like that phrase was absolutely made for Jinx Monsoon. Now, I think some people, myself included, much to my surprise, I really enjoyed it. I really liked Jinx's performance as Maestro. It was so over the top. I feel like I shouldn't have enjoyed it, but I did. I just did. But I can see why a lot of people would be like, well, this is just panto. What on earth is this? How can I take this seriously? This is over the top. This is it. So I totally get both sides of the coin when it comes to Jinx's performance. But I can only talk for myself, mate. I felt like they were so pantomime that I just went with it, and I did enjoy it. Like every line was so over the top, but I don't know. For me, it worked. I found them quite creepy. I found Maestro quite creepy. I kept thinking, like, I knew the Doctor was going to defeat them, but when they kept popping up and jumping out of the piano, and then there was that scene where the room went dark after the Doctor took Ruby back to see Destroyed London, and they were, I don't know, it worked for me, I have to say, performance-wise, but
yeah, no,
I do get why some people would just be looking at it thinking, this is just so over the top, I can't be doing with this. I think it's very much a personal preference on that one, but that bit in London, mate, when the Doctor takes Ruby back to see, the timeline, she's questioning, well, that can't happen because I'm here. So that's very much like taken straight out of Pyramids of Mars. I mean, everybody's picked up on that, right? That's been done before. So again, it felt a little bit like, is Russell struggling to fill 45 minutes that he's got to put, take a scene from another Doctor Who story that everyone's going to say, well, that's exactly what the Doctor did in Pyramids of Mars. It was almost like beat for beat the same thing. So how did you feel about that? You must have felt the same. You must be like, well, we've seen this before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although it was good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. But you have seen it. Yeah, it was almost beat for beat, wasn't it? And Russell does that really well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He doesn't. He borrows from classic Who quite a lot. Often in subtle ways, but in some ways like this, a bit more on the nose. But it doesn't make it a bad thing. But it does highlight that whole thing, like you mentioned earlier, when Russell's like, it's just a collection of scenes, perhaps, and just a collection of things that happen. Again, it just lends itself to there wasn't a massive amount of meat on the bones, because other than the conflict and the battle between Maestro and the Doctor and Ruby, the rest of it is a little bit thin on the ground.
It is.
Sure. So yeah, I completely get that, and did notice that it just highlights that even more when there's not much else going on. So
I suppose why that worries me, mate, is because these first two episodes have been very thin on story. That's what worries me about Russell. Like when people are saying he's lost it, I can see where they're coming from, because if he's come back after all this time saying he wanted to come back to Doctor Who because he's got this grandmaster plan and all these stories he wants to tell, and it's like, but if this, if these paper thin stories are what you've come back to tell, it is concerning. To be honest with you, I totally get why people are criticizing it. As much, even though I enjoyed it, the story is so thin. I do get the feeling. I don't know if you felt this, and I'm glad I've seen other people say this on social media as well. I got the feeling this might have been brought forward in the series, because I get the feeling this was supposed to air later on in the series. And the reason I say that, there was a couple of moments in the episode where I felt like there was a bit, for example, where Ruby says, "Doctor, why are you scared? You're never scared. Why are you running? You never run." And that they've only just got to know each other. And I thought, well, that sounds like something she would say towards the end of the series where they've been through a few adventures. And there was another bit as well. I'm just looking through my notes. I can't remember what it was. But there were a few things about this that made me think, if they swapped the episode order around, like if they brought this forward because they think it's a stronger episode or something, and that again, if they have, that's concerning. But did you pick up on any of that? Because I've seen a few people say it as well.
Yes. Yeah, it's well, when we got on to when we play the clip that we've already recorded for all the listener reviews and everything, there was a few people that said that the Doctor is not your sort of traditional hero in the sense of like, he's not like a muscle bound dude, or he doesn't have like magical powers or anything like that. But in terms of the show overall, he is the hero, or they are the hero of the show, aren't they? So when you have someone like that in a roundabout sort of way, the companion needs to rely on as well. So when you see them like just bolting, whenever there's a bit of danger or something's going on, it sort of goes, it makes you feel a little bit like, well, if the Doctor's running away, what hope does that have for anyone else? That needs to be involved, whether that's unit or the companion or whatever. If the Doctor's just going to turn and run when there's a little bit of danger or something that's coming, how is this going to work? So I completely see why you people think that, because it's a shared thing. I've seen that a few times with people saying that, and it also plays into something I was thinking about. I was going to ask you anyway about Jinx Monsoon, and just incidentally, I think their performance was excellent.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure how you'd feel about Jinx.
Yeah, cool. So I get the whole thing about very over the top and chewing the scenery a little bit, but I think that's, for the most part, I think that was completely intentional. I think that was, you don't cast somebody like Jinx Monsoon and then ask them to hold back. No,
that's spot on.
That would just be ridiculous to do that. You don't. So that wouldn't work. So and I thought their performance was really cool. Really, that kind of unsettling thing about them, where they're smiling and singing and coming across as happy, but that they're completely evil to a degree, and is very sinister, unhinged. Yeah. I would say that it was a strange kind of realization when she said about being the toy maker's daughter, or the toy whatever. Yeah, that was a little bit weird, in that, again, a bit like I said about the Space Babies not feeling like being epic enough for a series opener. I felt a similar way to this, where because the toy maker was such a revered villain from the classic years, and because the toy maker hadn't been brought back, it maintained that air of mystery about it and was a very cool villain from back in the day. And then obviously coming back for the Crimbo special, that was cool. But I felt like that needed a bit more epic thrown in there as well. Like the realization and the reveal that, they were the toy makers. I felt like that needed a much bigger stage to have that reveal, and like have the Doctor's reaction be, completely thrown, out of his his senses gone mad, and that just, that I'm trying to explain, like in some series where, in some TV shows or films where the character comes to that realization that something dreadful has just been revealed, and you just feel like the world is shattered around them. And sometimes they use effects like all the outside noise just gets like faded away into echo, and the camera zooms in and their face is just like, oh my God. I felt like it needed something like that for the Doctor to have the realization that, oh, beep, this is not going to go well. But when it happened, it was just sort of thrown into conversation as they were doing stuff, you know?
I'd actually forgotten about it, and I've watched it twice, and until you said it, I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, which kind of proves the point. It wasn't a mic drop moment, was it?
Not really.
Maybe it should have been, yeah. Yeah, because I'd actually genuinely like forgotten that that revelation happened, to be honest with you. And it's, it feels like it should be a big thing.
I think so.
Just kind of thrown away, yeah.
So
talking of...
Sorry. I was going to say, Jinx Monsoon's performance, amazing. The character realisation and some of the bits around it, not really realise as much. But sorry, dude, what were you going to say?
No, it's just you talking about taking the sound away just made me think of that scene, actually, where the Doctor literally does that with the Sonic. He took everything was taken away, and Jinx couldn't sing. And I thought that was a great scene. I really liked that idea. I mean, okay, so the Doctor's used the Sonic can do anything now. Oh, I know, I get it. But I did like the scene. I loved it. I just seen Jinx get so frustrated that, what's happening? And then using the tuning fork in the puddle, and I'm not quite sure how that reset it, if I'm honest, but I liked that. I thought that was, again, a nice idea that was sort of needed in an episode that was becoming just a bit of a runaround. It sort of changed it up a bit. I also loved the intro. I don't know how you feel about this, but I loved the pre-title sequence where Maestro started playing the Doctor Who theme, the first few notes, and then we went into it. I thought that was great. Loved that.
Yeah, that was really cool. How did you feel
about it?
Really cool opening. Yeah. Because it was really quite scary and creepy the way that was done, and I think that's what Doctor Who needs injected into it a little bit. Is maybe that's why the Space Babies, the opening episode didn't work so much, because it didn't inject that hide behind the sofa vibe that I think Doctor Who really needs at times. There's nothing wrong with playing it straight or playing it silly or being humorous or whatever, but I honestly feel like Doctor Who needs that balance of being light-hearted and inspirational and relatable and all that stuff, but it also needs that little bit of horror aspect to it. Not horror as in, it scars people's minds for life like some horror films do, and I don't mean to that degree, but just inject that little bit. And that was the opening for me. That was really cool like that. I remember I watched both of these episodes with my wife, and she was really creeped out by that opening scene where they come through the piano and all that stuff. Maestro playing a Doctor Who theme, I'm going to park that just for a second, dude, because we're going to come back to that and some other bits around that area. But let's talk about the Beatles quickly, because there was a lot of hype, wasn't there, around this episode featuring the Beatles and all that stuff. And I think we knew going up to the episode. I don't know if it was Russell that tweeted it or it came about in an interview. I can't remember, but we knew just before the episode went out that there wouldn't be any songs by the Beatles. So we knew that. So it'd be like, okay, so how are they going to work this in then? But I felt like, again, the epicness of something like the Beatles being in an episode of Doctor Who just wasn't there, mate. Like the first introduction to them, when you see them in the studio, you kind of got the feeling like, okay, they sort of look like them. And they did this kind of comical, old school Liverpudlian accent, which is kind of working, I guess. It was, it was basically like if you saw a Beatles tribute band down the pub. It was that kind of vibe, it wasn't anything amazing. And then they played this weird song and you think, oh, right, okay, something's clearly off here, which obviously led into the whole music being stolen and stuff by Maestro, which is fair enough. But then they just disappeared. Like we had that little bit afterwards in the canteen where Millie's talking to John Lennon, I think, and the Doctor's talking to Paul McCartney, and they had this little conversation, which was really nice between the two of them. But you kind of got detracted a little bit because you felt like, well, that looks nothing like Paul McCartney. Like you haven't even found somebody that looks remotely like him, let alone a little bit. You can't just slap on a 60s style wig and do a very bad Liverpudlian accent and, that's going to be cool. And the same with John Lennon. And after that, they just disappear, dude. Pretty much anyway. And then it's not until the very end that one of our writers, Harry, picked up on this as well in his review, that the Doctor's really, excuse the pun, battling it out with Maestro, and it's all not going to plan. And just by accident, Paul McCartney and John Lennon, both of them are walking down the corridor and see the piano with the floating musical notes and stuff. And they happen to, come up with this, the aha hallelujah moment, hallelujah. It's like, a bit like at the end of the Christmas special, when everything gets wrapped up in a neat little bow. Mm-hmm. When we said that, it kind of felt like that to me, where they just happened to be walking down the corridor. And even though throughout the entire episode, their musical genius was suppressed in some way, they just happened to look at each other at that point and do the chord and stuff. So it was a nice kind of parallel to the opening bit where the musical instructor says about the devil's chord, the thing that invokes, which happened to call Maestro. And then at the very end, you get the opposite to that. It's like the golden chord or the God chord, whatever you want to call it, that saves the day. So in your opinion, dude, the Beatles in this one?
Yeah, they didn't feel like the Beatles. You're absolutely right. It just didn't. It's not just about the look of them. None of them looked like any of the Beatles. But yeah, they didn't feel like the Beatles, and maybe that's because their music wasn't in it. Maybe it's because they looked nothing like them. It just, I don't know. They could have been anyone, really. What made me laugh as well is the actor that played Ringo, who kicked off on TikTok recently, posting a video which was just excruciating to watch, where he was having a meltdown about the fact that people were criticizing their look. I don't think he even made it. He may have been in one frame because he's hardly in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and they were hardly in it. That's the thing. So they weren't really, apart from coming and saving the day at the end, they were a bit of a plot device. They weren't really part of the main story. And as a big Beatles fan, it is a little bit sad because I love the Beatles. Some people say they're overrated, but I love them. I think considering the time that they made music, they made some absolutely classic stuff, and they experimented, and I think they shaped music. But you didn't get any of that from this. But
no,
yeah, they weren't really part of the plot.
No, they weren't really, and not to say that they should have been. I get that this wasn't an episode purely about the Beatles. I get that it was about Maestro and that sort of thing. But such a big, iconic band like the Beatles, I think they just missed that sort of epic feel to them. There was a little bit of it when the Doctor and Ruby come into the recording studio, and they're a little bit like, whoa, that's the Beatles. There was a little bit of that, but certainly not that epicness. And our buddies over on another podcast, actually, if you go and check out the Doctor Who show, Dave and Rob, when they do their review of this episode, they actually deep dive a little bit into all the little nuances and details about Abbey Road Studios and the year that the Doctor went back and the costumes and all the details. It's a fascinating listen from those guys. Yeah. They're a lot more clued up on that stuff. So go and give that a listen. And, there's a lot of details that were not quite right. So I'm not going to go through all of them.
I was listening to...
Did you listen to it?
I was listening to those guys yesterday, mate. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I love those guys. Give a big shout out to the Doctor Who show. Yeah. Yeah,
they're very cool. So go and give that a listen. You'll go into a lot more details about that. But Beatles aside, dude, before we get on to the last little bit I want to talk about, I thought Shooty's performance was a little bit more... had a little bit more range in this one, just because the script allowed him to be a bit more, to give a little bit more on either end of the scale. So in Space Babies, other than a couple of little moments where he felt like he had to run away from the bogeyman and some other bits, it was kind of flat, as in he was just hopping and jumping around like a children's entertainer the whole time, Whereas in this one, there was a few bits like that, but there was also a couple of scenes where he was absolutely terrified, when he realizes that, he references the bi regeneration from the Christmas special.
Yes.
He's like, I can't go through that again. It will kill me. This entity is too powerful and all that stuff. So absolutely fearful, and then quite upset at a couple of things as well, So when he's up on the roof and he's looking over London, And we had that little scene where he goes into like a sort of melancholic little, nostalgic moment where he talks about Susan and totters, and all that stuff at the other end of London, and talks about his granddaughter. And Millie Ruby's really surprised. She's like, "You've got a granddaughter," and all that stuff. So some really nice scenes from him, and shows a bit more range, I thought, in terms of how he portrayed his doctor in the first one, which was just very light-hearted and clown-like.
No, absolutely agree. I thought Shooty was great in it. As was Millie. Once again, I thought the chemistry is absolutely oozing off the screen between those two. I liked the scene on the roof where the doctor talked about, I'm over there somewhere in Shoreditch, although it then started to make me think, where is the first Doctor at this moment? Where is the seventh Doctor? He's battling the Hand of Omega somewhere in 1963. So you could open a whole can of worms there, but I liked him talking about that. It did make me think about the editing, because there was some strange editing in this episode, mate. I feel like, again, stuff was cut, because in that scene, he's talking about, he's the last of the Time Lords again. He's mentioning Susan, which I really want Susan to come back. I've been saying this for ages. And of course, now people are saying, she's been mentioned a few times. Could Susan be making an appearance this series? But the editing, mate, he talked about being the last Time Lords and Susan being dead, I think, or they've all gone. And then in the very next shot, he's hugging Ruby laughing. And that was jarring to me. It's like, yeah, they're all dead. Give us a hug. I felt like there was dialogue missing. Then almost a minute or two after that, there's a bit where he's at the piano and suddenly his Sonic's in his hand and then it's not. So I feel like, even though this episode was slightly longer, I feel like stuff was cut. But yeah, I found that particular bit where he was laughing after saying they're all dead, jarring. I don't know. Again, a blink and you miss it. Probably a lot of people may not have even picked up on that, but just felt like there was some editing going on in this episode. But yeah, liked all those scenes, and you're right about Shooter's depth and showing that emotion. Russell said he's going to be a more emotional Doctor, and I'm already starting to see that. But again, that to me is adding layers. As long as he's still the hero and stuff, then I'm all for that. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there was shades of him not being the hero again, like the first one when he ran away, sort of thing. And he sort of crumbles a little bit. And I thought Millie Gibson had another good performance from her. Again, a little bit more range versus Space Babies, where she gets really intense, when she's playing the piano up on the roof.
Wasn't that gorgeous, that music?
Really nice.
Wasn't that music absolutely stunning? I loved that scene, yeah.
Yeah, she sort of gets transported, doesn't she, into another place, and she's in the zone, and she's a lot more intense. Yeah. And then later on in the music battle and stuff, it's a similar thing and that. So, she was very cool, loving being back in the 60s and whatnot, and all laughing and giggly and stuff, all that stuff you'd expect in the opening part. But then as the episode went on, she shows a bit more range, which is all good. But okay, one thing I want to finish up on with this review then is this whole concept of breaking the fourth wall and your theory behind this, because it starts off right at the beginning of the episode, when we're in the TARDIS interior just before we land and they do the whole costume change thing. The music that's playing from the jukebox is the theme, right? The Doctor Who theme. Yeah. So right from the get-go, we're breaking the fourth wall. And then the scene where Maestro comes out the piano at the beginning, they start playing the theme on the piano. You think, right, okay, weird. And then the big musical number at the end. Okay, so what kicks that off is actually the Doctor looking straight into the camera, saying that there's always a twist at the end and giving us a wink and stuff. And then we have this, I don't even know a word to describe it, dude. We have this massive High School Musical, Glee style, huge musical number. I mean, it's not like a very quick little few bars just to exit the episode.
It goes on and on.
Yeah, this is a full-on, proper, choreographed, Murray Gold wrote this big musical number, which is directed at us, the viewer. It is basically saying, look, expect a huge twist. So, first of all, your thoughts on the musical number, but secondly, do you have a theory for all of this breaking the fourth wall stuff?
The musical number just threw me out completely. I didn't mind it. I know some people hated it. It just threw me, mate. So on the second watch, I obviously knew it was coming, but on the first watch, yeah, we all turned and looked at each other like, what the hell? I could have done without it. I think that I wouldn't, if it wasn't there, I think the episode might be better for it, but I didn't mind it, to be honest with you. And then you think it's finished, and then there's more. They start dancing across the zebra crossing and their musical notes. And I did feel like it, maybe I'd had, on the first watch, I thought, am I tripping? Did someone spike my drink last night? Because it was very over the top. But I, to be absolutely honest with you, mate, I didn't mind it. I didn't sit there cringing like I think some people may have done. So I didn't mind the musical number, but it was jarring. As for the breaking the fourth wall, I'm not a fan of that, to be honest with you. But once again, it didn't really bother me. I do have this thing, ever since someone said about, I think Russell's doing a whole WandaVision thing. They're trapped the toy makers trapped them in a TV show or something like that. This theory, I have started to buy into that because of all the fourth wall breaking and the musical number. And this is feeling very different Doctor Who already. And I just keep having this vision in my head, mate. Do you remember the robot from the Celestial Toy Maker that had the TV screen in his belly?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember that robot? Mm-hmm. The real 60s looking robot? I just keep having this vision of like halfway through the series, the camera panning out from a scene, and then the next thing you know, we're coming out of that TV in the robot's belly, and the toy makers sat watching them on that screen. I just keep having that vision, and I don't know where that's come from. I think it's just because people are talking about them being stuck in a TV show. I would love that. I would be like, aha, things are starting to make sense. They are trapped in a TV show, and it would sort of excuse some of this stuff, which is making it feel a little bit like that it's not Doctor Who as we know it. So so I would be up for a sort of concept like that. But do you think that would be cool, mate? Did you like that? Do you like that vision? Like the camera pans back, we come out of the TV of the robot, and the toy maker sat at the other end going, I've got you just where I want you, or something like that. Do you like that idea?
Yes, I think that would be cool. And I think that would explain...
Russell, don't go nicking my idea, because I want royalties.
Well, we know that Russell's probably sat with the notepad out listening at the minute, but I think...
He will have switched off after the first 5 minutes of this podcast, but anyway.
True. I think that would be an amazing idea. And there is a part of me that thinks that kind of thing is coming, because in previous, like I'm talking about previous decades of Doctor Who, just a handful of times where the fourth wall has been broken, it's always had that effect on people. Like, why did you do that? Like, most of the time it made no sense to do it. And secondly, it just feels weird in the context of this type of TV program, because it mixes like science fiction with drama and comedy and stuff. It's not like a comedy show, where that happens a lot more. You seldom see this with like dramas and things. So it often feels just a bit like, I can see why you did that. You want to spice things up a bit. You want to have a tiny little talking point for the critics to latch onto and whatever. It's fine. But when you have an episode where it's happened like 4 or 5 times throughout just one episode, you think to yourself, right, there's got to be something in that. There has to be, some kind of plot mechanism. And it really screams of like, you remember, I think, did you mention this a while ago? The episode breaking the fourth wall from WandaVision, the Marvel series, towards the end where Agatha Harkness basically turns to the camera and does a little musical number, like she was the one behind everything all along and all that stuff. Yeah. It's almost a carbon copy of that sort of thing, So
it feels like it's going that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would imagine at some point later in the series, like you said, there'll be a scene and all of a sudden the screen will stop, like we're watching it, but it will pause and there'll be like some weird scan lines that come over the screen. The camera pans out. And like you said, it's either a toy maker thing with the robots TV or some kind of thing where the Doctor's basically in a bubble somewhere that's being watched. And that's why we're getting the fourth wall breaks. But
we got the one who waits mentioned again as well, didn't we? So
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
they're on the other side, because that was the other thing made me think this may originally be an episode that was intended to be later in the series, because Maestro says the one who waits is nearly here. And that, I mean, unless they're going to suddenly pop up in the next episode, that again felt like this was more of a sort of end of season build up episode. You know, they're nearly here already. So yes. I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no clue who the one who waits is going to be. Again, theories are out there. I'm liking the theorizing, but I don't know.
Yeah, and it also lends into the whole theory of like the Doctor and Ruby are being dressed up for an episode that people are watching. So in this one where we have them dressed up in the 60s style because that time period, a bit like another episode of a TV show that's being watched when we get to the episode Rogue, they're all in the period dress and all that stuff. So it's like somebody's directing these into like episodes that they're watching and then we're watching them watching it. So it's like a Gogglebox effect, you know, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's all interesting stuff, dude. But have you got anything else on your notes that you want to put down before we score this one?
I've just got very little things. I haven't heard anyone mention this on any other podcast, but being a big fan of The Prisoner, I couldn't help but notice a similarity between the Doctor when he was stuck in the drum and sort of pushes his face and hands out of the drum is so reminiscent of The Prisoner when he's being attacked by Rover, the big white balloon. I don't know if that's intentional, but it looks so similar. And if it is intentional, I love it. So I quite liked that whole ending where they were sort of trapped in the cello case or wherever it was in the drum. I thought that was quite fun. And the only other thing I really want to say, mate, is that I'm never ever going to forgive Russell for killing off June Hudson. Because I love June Hudson. So she was the little old lady that was peacefully playing a piano, and then suddenly, you know, Maestro comes in, and because I've met June a few times, she is absolutely amazing as a person. She's the costume designer for loads of classic Doctor Who, and she's everywhere. She pops up in adverts on TV. She was even on the wall in Specsavers when I went in the other day. That woman gets everywhere, and she's amazing. And so shout out to June Hudson. I'm so sad she got killed on screen. But I just course about that. But it was lovely to see Jude in the episode, let's put it that way. And Murray popped in. There were a few little cameos, weren't there? Murray was at the piano for a shot, and I think there were a few other people. So yeah. But yeah, lovely to see Jude Hudson make an appearance in it. Yeah,
there's actually another theory, dude, around her character, you know, that I've seen knocking about. I don't know if you've seen it, but
no.
Yeah, because she's popped up as a couple of different characters throughout.
No. Sorry, that's Susan Twist. That's a different actress.
Sorry. Right.
June Hudson's the old lady in the little, Susan Twist. Yeah, I'm glad you've mentioned this because this went over my head. I hadn't even noticed it was the same actress. But yeah, go for it, mate. Explain it, because I didn't realize this till I watched a YouTube video yesterday. Yeah.
So essentially, the theory is that a lot of people have got is just who is Susan Twist, because it's a character that's popped up a couple of times throughout Doctor Who as a different character but played by the same actress, if that makes sense. So, I say a different character is Susan Twist, of course. But a lot of people are saying that she's the woman who left Ruby. If it's not Ruby who's left herself there as a young baby or whatever, this Susan Twist character. And also, because that's the character name, obviously, Susan Twist. And at the end of this episode, there's such a massive emphasis on the saying, there's always a twist at the end. So a lot of people have latched onto that and have thought, well, you know, this character's popped up so she's popped up as like, you know, this hippie looking woman at a party. She's popped up as one of the crew members in Space Babies at the end. You know, when they're playing back the crew members' last log entry, one of those is her. And then she's in it as the dinner lady in this episode.
Yeah.
You know, so she's popped up, and then she was in the Christmas special. She's talking to Isaac Newton out in the garden at the beginning there. And
I was going to say, yes. Yeah, sorry, go on, man.
Sorry, yeah. So she's popped up a few times. There has to be something in that, right? Surely.
I hope so, mate, because I'm loving this. I'm loving the fact that I haven't realised it's the same actor until someone pointed out, because she looks different in every episode she's in, and she's only in it for like 30 seconds to a minute of each episode. And the thing I'm loving about it, and I really hope there is some sort of payoff for this character. I think Susan Twist is her real name, by the way. I don't think that's the character name. I think that's her real name,
No.
believe it or not.
Is it?
No, I think that's the actor's name. Yeah, I think so. Somebody may want to correct me, but yeah. But what I'm loving, mate, is have you noticed that every time she's in a scene, they always, the Doctor and Ruby or whatever, always turn their back just as she turns around. So they never actually see her. So when she appears on the screen in the spaceship, that's the moment they get distracted and you just see her in the background. So it's like, look behind you, there's that character. In the canteen, she's got a back to the Doctor and Ruby until they turn around and face the camera, and then she turns around. So they never get to actually see this character that's lurking in the background of each episode. And as I say, I didn't even notice it was the same person. So I don't know why. I think this is the thing that's intriguing me the most at the moment about this series.
Yeah. What a fail. Dude, I thought that was a character name. But no, you're right.
It sounds like a character name, mate, to be fair.
Yeah, but no, it's the actress's name.
Sorry, Susan, that sounds a bit rude, but you know what I mean.
Yes, so my bad. Yeah, Susan Twist is the actress's name. But she turns up and she doesn't have a character name associated, so she's just like tea lady, whatever. So there has to be something in that, dude. There can't just be the same supporting actress turns up this many times. Like, spread across an entire series or a couple of series. If you happen to have the same supporting actress pop up in the background somewhere, fine. There's probably nothing to that. But this does definitely have a shade of Moffat about it, and I've got visions of being at the finale and the Doctor having a sequence of flashbacks, and we have all these little clips of where she appears, and then that's that realization moment for the Doctor, like it was right in front of my face the whole time, I just never noticed who she was. So I can see that sort of thing happening. But yeah, what a great little, that more than anything, like you, is probably the best part of the new Doctor Who so far, is this little potential twist. But so a very missed opportunity for the song title. It
lit a little bit of excitement in me, because I was sort of sat in the garden feeling a little bit deflated about the 2 episodes. Was this yesterday or the day before, whenever I messaged you, and I was like flicking through YouTube and all the videos are the same. It's like Doctor Who is dead and the ratings are bad and blah blah. And then I saw this little video from a chap I know called Richard Lloyd, actually, and it was like, who is Susan Twist? And I was like, oh yeah, I've heard someone else say that. So I clicked on his video and watched it, and I was like, oh, this is like completely gone over my head. This is actually quite cool. Like, so it kind of relit the fire in me a little bit for the series, thinking, okay, that's really the Russells, managed to sew this little character into each episode. Who the hell are they? And there was another bit where Russell was being interviewed, and he's got a magazine behind him with her face on it saying Icon. And that magazine, you can just see it on the screen in unit, like the corner of the magazine. So there's definitely something going on, mate. And I'm loving the intrigue. Yeah, I'm loving it. I hope it's got a good payoff.
Yeah, same, dude. Yeah, same. Looks good. So we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully something comes of it. Otherwise, it's just a very odd, random little quirk that's gone nowhere. But we'll see on that one. So, alrighty, if you've got no more thoughts, dude, let's put a score on this. It's me to go first on this one. So
you go first on this one, yeah?
I'm going to give this a 5.5 because
5.5.
Like I said, I enjoyed it a little bit more than Space Babies, but I'm just still not really on board with this whole new Doctor Who yet, outside of Ncuti and Millie being absolutely brilliant. I'm just not quite into it yet. I'm not coming away from episodes thinking, oh my God, these are cracking episodes, So I think without a doubt, if there's any better Doctor Who to come, it's going to be after these 2. What about you?
Yeah, and it shouldn't be the way, mate, should it? Really, you want the series to kick off with 2 bangers that get people talking. So in that sense, I'm deflated. But this one I enjoyed more because it had threat. You talked earlier about the fact that in Space Babies, I just didn't feel any sort of threat or any sort of danger or anything to get me invested in any of it. This, at least, Maestro felt like they were unpredictable, and it did have me a little bit on the edge of a seat at times. So, and I loved the music, mate. I thought the music in it was gorgeous, the piano playing and all the stuff like that based around it. So, whilst not perfect, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Overall, I enjoyed this one.
A 7?
Overall, that's the important word. Not perfect, but overall, yeah.
A 7. Okay, cool.
7.
Alrighty, so a 4 apiece then for Space Babies, and then a 5.5 from me for Devil's Chord, and a 7 from him. What did our awesome listeners think? So we've already got a pre-recorded clip for all of you guys and your thoughts, so let's run that now. Alrighty, let's get into the listener reviews for Space Babies and The Devil's Chord, kicking off over on X, formerly known as the Twitter. We have Rob Kelly at Rob Kelly Tweets says, for me, Space Babies was a disappointment, offering a lackluster start. I'd rate it 0 out of 10. On the other hand, The Devil's Chord proved to be enjoyable, earning a solid 7 out of 10. One of our writers, Jordan Shortman, says, Space Babies was a fun runaround designed to reintroduce the new Doctor and companion and show how great Ncuti and Millie are, and I loved The Devil's Chord. Okay, the Glee song at the end would have been better served as the Maestro's defeat, but otherwise it was a lot of fun. Dan Peters, with a few tweets here, says, unfortunately, I thought Space Babies was pretty poor and forgettable. I get that RTD thinks the first episode should be more upbeat and fun, but for me it needs to immediately engage the viewer. I can't help thinking that this might put a lot of new viewers off. I had no interest in the plot and found myself falling asleep during the first viewing, although that might have been because it was 12:30 a.m. The CGI on the babies wasn't great, and most of them looked like they wanted their mum. The one thing I did like were the flashbacks to the church, and the mystery surrounding Ruby has me intrigued, so 5 out of 10. And then The Devil's Chord was a big improvement, and despite a few flaws, I really enjoyed it. Maestro was an interesting villain, and Ncuti and Millie are already looking like a fantastic team. The 60s setting was well realised, and I loved the reference to Susan. What let it down for me was the musical number and fourth wall break at the end. It felt out of place and should have shown, and may have shown, Disney's influence. Overall, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Looking forward to Boom next week, hopefully another Moffat classic. Thank you very much, Dan. Jippy T says, Space Babies, if the target was new audience in new markets, then fine. If not, it was SJA level. 5.5, so The Devil's Chord, more grown up, great villain, a touch of RTD writing, something he would like to watch. Nice references to what's coming next, making it intriguing. Beatles were wasted, an 8. As a separate point, it seems as if RTD has been what Chibbers did for Dr. Jodie and is selectively going to use his ideas, tweak them and build on Who's mythos. I'll be happy with that. Cheers, Chippy. Tom Turlow says, I can't quite decide if these episodes were absolutely brilliant or absolutely terrible. There is a distinctive flavour to the latest incarnation of the show, and I'm not sure I've got used to it yet. Ncuti is charismatic, but I'm not on board with him yet. Millie Gibson is gorgeous and likeable. Space Babies was frothy and silly and very pantomime, but sort of enjoyable. The Devil's Chord was better. Jinx Monsoon's performance was not subtle, but I enjoyed it. It's a shame we didn't get to hear a Beatles song at the end. This feels like quite a new version of the show, and I'm not quite on board. Maybe a bit of Moffat will convince me. Space Babies 6 out of 10, The Devil's Chord 7. Matt Holder says, I wasn't a fan of Space Babies and didn't pay much attention to the episode. I'd give that one 4 out of 10. The Devil's Chord, however, was much better with the delightfully OTT Maestro. 7.5 out of 10. And lastly on Twitter, Everett Stevens says, both 5 out of 10 for me. Ncuti shines in a couple of scenes in Space Babies, but then runs and hides embarrassingly out of character. From Maestro, like the toy maker, are meant to be godlike beings and yet are beaten easily in less than an episode. Millie is more of a plot device than a fleshed out character. It's clear from watching the episodes that scenes were cut and continuity is poor. Okay, so thank you very much, you lot, for sending in your reviews over on the Twitter. Let's see what our listeners thought over on Facebook. First up, David Madley. Is it me, or was Maestro just like a villain straight out of the TV Batman show? All seemed very cartoony, but loved it. Charlie Turner says, Space Babies is good, but not great. I liked the scene of the Doctor saving the bogeyman, as it felt kind of identical to the Waters of Mars in a way, but not as powerful. Possibly 8 out of 10 if I had to rate it, even if the child's mouths for the babies were horrific. The Devil's Chord, on the other hand, was an improvement. Maestro is a brilliant villain that sounds like it should be an incarnation of the Master, but it wasn't, is rather refreshing. I just wish that the Beatles were given more to do, as they did say that the Doctor would end up meeting them, and we got that, but it isn't enough. 9 out of 10 would have been 10, most likely, if the Beatles were given more to do, and not just occasional appearances from Paul McCartney and John Lennon throughout the whole episode. Short and sweet from David James Wilson, not for me, but each to their own. And then a smiley emoji, Dr. Glee, LOL. Mark Atkinson, I thought both episodes were absolutely terrible. Oh dear. RTD's writing is atrocious. I'm actually still in shock about how bad they actually are. My whole family felt the same. We felt so disappointed afterwards. The worst possible start to this new era. Space Babies 2 out of 10. The Devil's Chord 2.5 out of 10. Oh dear, Mark. Mark not feeling this one. Andrew Stewart. Hi Mummy and Daddy. Space Babies was your typical fun, the proper RTD season opener, much like New Earth, except Space Babies is much better than New Earth. I enjoyed it a lot, but the best thing in it was Shooty and Millie for me, and those scenes with the Doctor and Captain Poppy are heartwarming and funny. An 8 out of 10. The Devil's Chord was just brilliant. Jinx was fantastic, and once again, Shooty and Millie knocking it out the park. Fantastic, 9 out of 10. And also, I don't care what people say, I love the song. Also, I wonder if the fourth wall breaking will lead to the legend of Ruby Sunday, as the little clip we got showed to cameras. Thank you very much, Andrew. Chloe Rebecca says, I'm obsessed with Doctor Who and was so excited knowing that RCD is in charge again, but unfortunately I'm not taken with it just yet. I really don't like Maestro, just far too pantomime. No darkness or mystery to how she presented herself, unlike the Master, especially Missy, or the Toymaker. We're supposed to believe that she is one of the biggest, most deadly threats to the universe as we've ever faced, but I can't see it at all from how she presented herself in the episode. From what I've seen / read, the remaining episodes sound better, and I'm looking forward to them despite the shaky start. I did like Space Babies. I like the similarity between The End of the World with Companions Mobile being adapted. Thank you very much, Chloe. Mark Hugill says, Space Babies should never have made it past the idea stage. At least the bogeyman had the look of a traditional monster. In brackets, a man in a rubber suit. Talking Babies, just no, a 4 out of 10. Devil's Chord. Jinx Monsoon as Maestro was brilliant. Standout performance. Loved the segue into the opening theme. Final 5 minutes was awful and self-indulgent by RTD. Not suitable for Doctor Who. Overall 5 out of 10. RTD, please step back from story writing to stop this from being too overindulgent and inaccessible for viewers. I don't know who this is aimed at. Interesting, Mark. Thank you. Harry Walker, one of our writers, says, Space Babies. Shooty and Millie were absolutely fantastic, but this script does not do them justice. Far too weird and inconsequential to be a belter of an opening episode to a soft reboot. A 6 out of 10. And The Devil's Chord, like Shooty and Millie, who were on fine form again. Jinx Monsoon was incredible as Maestro, but the script is just very average. They were lucky John and Paul happened to be in the building to help out, eh? And the song at the end was just ridiculous. There had to be a reason for it to be tolerable, and there simply wasn't. Self-indulgent and rubbish. 4 out of 10. Oh, Harry. Max Smith says, Space Babies was a bit boring, if I'm honest. I lost interest quite early on. Felt a bit naff. 4 out of 10. Devil's Chord was more enjoyable, but I'm not fully convinced of this new era so far, so a 6 out of 10 for that one. Jeff Waddle says, Space Babies was an RTD greatest hits, nothing original and a bit paper thin on the plot. My goodness, those complaining of Chibnall exposition heavy dialogue and sonic overuse, that had nothing on what we see here. Dull. 3 out of 10. Devil's Chord is an excellent idea. Would have been great in a book, but somehow the ideas aren't realised well enough on screen, and it's all over the place. The maestro would be fine in small doses. Unfortunately, they're one note, no pun intended, and the novelty wears off quickly. 5 out of 10. What's with this incarnation being scared all the time and running away? Not liking this so far at all. Oh dear. Richard Hardman, who I think is who triple question mark on our Discord server, says, for the first time I am embarrassed to be a Doctor Who fan. The heavy-handed messages of the Chibnall era have been doubled down in this era. It was about as subtle as a sledgehammer the Doctor quote-unquote used on the TARDIS. I'm giving Space Babies 3 out of 10 purely as the babies made me laugh. The Devil's Chord 2 out of 10, an interesting concept went nowhere. The maestro was somewhat menacing, but for the second time the Doctor ran from danger. Our hero isn't much of a hero. The final twist could well be the jumping the shark moment. No idea who the target demographic is, but it's not me. Oh dear. Colin Carey says, they say if you can't say anything nice, then don't say anything at all. I stop at that. I think we can read between the lines there, Colin. Rob Doyle says, you can see why they released 2 episodes. Space Babies would have been fine as a children in need / comic relief special. Clumsy writing, just disappointing. 3 out of 10. The Devil's Chord was much better and would have been a 7 out of 10 if not for that ridiculous musical number at the end. I know it would have cost a fortune, but if you've got the Beatles in the episode, you end with a Beatles song. 5 out of 10. Paul Carrington says, good evening, Space Babies. My initial thoughts when first reading the synopsis was, sounds weird. On watching, it was okay, more a Tennant-y type story, but okay. The Space Babies, I thought, were well realised regards the mouth CGI, especially Captain Poppy. It made me chuckle with the swearing filter, but the bogeyman, come on, very literal and basic. Regards the Doctor and Ruby, I think the chemistry is amazing and really like the bond they seem to have straight away. Fart-powered space stations aside, I don't mind this story, but as a season opener, not 11th hour or Rose, plus the massive info dump about the Time Lords and Gallifrey seemed rush. 6 out of 10. And then the Devil's Chord. Now Ancient Gods, The Beatles, Abbey Road sounds brilliant, I thought. As a story, I still enjoyed it. The recreation of the classic album cover on Exciting the Beautiful, may I say, TARDIS was amazing. Then we met the Beatles. What an absolute waste of an opportunity. Whoever cast those fellas needs my glasses. Same with Cilla Black. Anyway, seeing the trailer with Jinx Monsoon and the curling lip and overstated costume, I was dreading the maestro, but I was totally loving him after 5 minutes. I can see kids scared to death of the maniacal rants he produced. All the nice mentions of Shoreditch and Susan were lovely. The tuning fork and the out of tune and loss of music in the world was intriguing. Going good now. Music battle, notes flying about. I like this. Lennon and McCartney apparently finding the lost chord, denoting they were actually musical geniuses, was great. Then it happened. To say I was shocked is an understatement. No gentle into the night. Well done, Doctor. Now let's crack on. No. Strictly bleeding come Doctor dances glee. Whatever you want to call it happened. I Strictly, not Glee. I like Strictly, not Glee, but not in Doctor Who. I'll get my words out in a second. Anyway, as a story, 8 out of 10. As a musical, it was all very well executed, but sorry, 1 out of 10. And the 1 is for the song because it's very catchy and I've been singing it most of the day. Damn you, RTD. Boom, looks good. A decent long review there from Paul. Thank you very much, Paul. And lastly, Alex Bobbins says, Space Babies would have been a fun episode of Red Dwarf, but what a waste of time for a shortened series of Doctor Who. No Bogey Wonderland, 3 out of 10. And the Devil's Chord was better and Shooty shows promise, but that god-awful song and dance routine is hard to forgive. Sorry, Russell, but the twist at the end is 5 out of 10. Well, thank you lot for all of your reviews. That was the ones on Facebook and for the ones over on Twitter. Very much appreciated. Now, let's get back to the episode. Thank you very much for all of you for sending in your... There was loads of you that commented this week, which is why we did a little pre-record thing. So
many.
Yeah, thank you very much for all that. And So a little bit of an update for next week. Unfortunately, we can't record next week because I've got a work commitment. So we should be back the following week where we'll review 2 episodes together again. And that will be Boom from next week, which is the Moffat episode, and the episode called 73 Yards, which is, again, written by RTD. So we'll see how the next 2 eps pan out, dude, in a couple of weeks. But I think on that note, we will wrap it there, dude, for episode 398.
Alrighty.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Big Blue Box. That was episode 398, and it was a bit of a long one this week, but we did have a couple of eps to get through, so thank you very much. And thank you also for sending in your thoughts and reviews for the first 2 episodes. We'll do the same thing again in a couple of weeks. Just keep an eye on the socials and reply with your mini review and score out of 10 when we do Boom and 73 Yards. Just very quickly, as mentioned earlier, make sure you are following the podcast on whatever podcast app you listen to your podcasts on. You won't miss an episode when they land most Fridays. And you can also listen over on the website, which is bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. There are links to go off to the socials there, so make sure you're following us to get the updates when asking for your reviews and all that stuff. And there's also a link to the free Discord server, so hop in there and chat Who with other Who fans. Also, don't forget to remember to check out Adam's channel over on the YouTube. It's called The Geek's Handbag.
The Geek's Handbag, loads of geeky videos. Go and check it out. I'll tell you what, mate, I feel doing this podcast is so therapeutic. I feel so good for getting all that off my chest.
Yeah, much the same, dude. Yeah, much the same, yeah. So then, until next time for episode 399, my name's Gary.
My name's Adam.
And remember,